First of all, thank you all for coming out. I wrestled with what time to do this first meeting. As a working parent, evening meetings tend to be what I've needed to settle on. But I know that that's not everybody's situation, and I know when it gets dark early, it's hard to come out late at night, or what feels like late at night. So thank you for sacrificing your time and being here this evening. This is a really big deal for me this evening because this type of interaction is exactly what I envisioned when I ran for office, when I wanted to make sure that we started to have more of a dialogue between our leaders and our residents, and kind of an open door policy, making government more accessible, making it make sense. It can be super confusing a lot of times. A lot of folks don't even know what it is that we do at local government. I certainly have learned so much, even just in the brief time that I've been in office. So part of what I hope to do is to not just answer specific questions about Three Chopt as these years go on, but to just make folks feel more involved in their own government, so that we can all be excited about some of the great things that we're doing, and also have the voice to share when we don't, and we can have respectful dialogue and discourse and work on the things that we can all do better. So thank you all for being a part of this first step with me here. If you don't know much of anything about me, other than the fact that I very narrowly won this election in November, I am an attorney by trade, so I have a law practice. I've had a law practice in Henrico County for almost 20 years now. I'm a trial lawyer, so I focus on domestic relations, criminal defense, social justice advocacy. I'm a trial lawyer, so and I'm a loud voice. So generally when someone has a situation that they need someone to be a loud voice on, they call me, and if I can help, that's what I try to do. I'm a military veteran. I actually grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, kind of a hard knock story if you've heard a little bit about that. I was a teen mom. I had my daughter when I was 15 years old after a childhood of trauma. And then I graduated from high school when I was 16, enlisted in the Army when I was 17, and served for about 5 years in the U.S. Army, both domestic and abroad. After I got out of the military, I came here to the Richmond area, enrolled in Virginia Commonwealth University, where I got my undergraduate degree in political science, and then accepted entrance to William & Mary for law school. And the entire time that I was doing that, I was getting married, getting divorced, getting married, raising children. My oldest daughter that I had when I was 15, she is now 32. Doing wonderfully. She lives in Maryland. I have a 24-year-old son who is a probation officer in the city of Richmond. He's doing amazing as well. And then there in the back corner is my son Lennox, who is doing his favorite thing on his devices. And he is a fourth grader at Twin Hickory Elementary School. He transferred from Colonial Trail just last year. So I am probably about as transparent and open and sometimes unfiltered as leadership can be, and that is by design, because I truly believe that when we feel comfortable with the folks that are leading us, we feel free to actually express how we feel about things so that we can get things done. So there is nothing that you can come to me with or ask me about that I will make you feel silly for asking or make you feel like it's not worth my time or anything like that, so please take advantage of that. That is the way that I want to lead our district. We have assembled a great team, and I will say that I've always known Henrico County was doing a lot of things right. I didn't quite know the depths of that until we started doing all of these tours, and the county manager, Mr. Batolkas, took us, the three new board members, on what I affectionately called field trips. So we took 3 days and we toured all around the county of Henrico, and we met a lot of folks from the heads of departments to folks just on the grind every day. Saw a lot of great things, and one thing that I have come to really know is that the county of Henrico employs the very best people. And so we've got several of these folks here today that are going to talk with you about some pretty specific subjects. Today I wanted to focus kind of on the broad question of what's coming to Three Chopt, because that was what I kept hearing a lot, both with trepidation from some people, like, oh my God, what's coming to Three Chopt now? And some people excited about what may be on the horizon. So we've got some good information coming to you from that. We'll have a question and answer period at the end. If you're watching virtually, employ the options for chat and all of that you can use to send us questions. I would like to recognize a couple of people that are in the audience today. So as you may know or may not know, when we get when we get elected, we have a vast, we have several pages of appointments that we make And one of the most important appointments that we make is the Planning Commission, because that is the person that sits and represents Three Chopt on the commission that determines or makes recommendations about what will or will not be approved for development in each region. And so after lots of consideration, I selected Mr. Bob Shippey. Please stand, Bob. So Bob Shippey is my planning commissioner, your planning commissioner, our planning commissioner, and he sits and has started working very diligently to be informed about the products. And I feel very comfortable knowing that Bob and I share a lot of very similar hopes and objectives for smart development. And if you followed me on the campaign trail at all, I talked a lot about smart development and making sure that we address what we know to be a very critical affordable housing situation, but also making sure that we're responsible to our future generations as well. So I'm excited about the work that Bob is going to do on that behalf. We also have our Three Chopt school board representative, Madison Irving. So Madison is a school teacher in another county. However, he obviously lives here in Three Chopt, has a growing young family, and really has his thumb on the pulse of what's going on in our schools. Really excited about the work that he is going to do. He has not been shy thus far about making his stamp on the school board. And so anything school board related, be sure, I know Madison is just as responsive as I am, so please reach out to him. A couple of other appointments that I made that I want to tell you about. The HEART Committee, which is a committee that was formed by Henrico to address some environmental issues. We each got to make an appointee on that. My appointee for that is a woman named Kim Germain. I don't believe she's here today, but she is very well established in the environmental community, and I feel very comfortable knowing that she is going to be hopefully leading some discussions about climate action plans and things that we want to make sure get done in this county sooner rather than later. A similar line is across the board. It's not an individual pick, but the board as a whole had to make an appointee for the Plan RVA Commission, which is a regional commission that talks about what we're doing kind of in combination with other localities. And so I suggested someone who lives in our district. His name is Chris Bast. And he was agreed upon by the other board members. So we now have a Three Chopt representative on the Plan RVA Commission. And I reappointed a number of folks that had served under my predecessor because I don't believe in fixing things that aren't broken just for the spite of it. So we have a number of folks on various commissions that I was happy to meet and shake their hands on for them to continue serving on in their capacities on various commissions. If you go on the website, you will see there's a whole host of commissions and they have kind of rotating expirations. You see something on there that you think, hey, this expires at the end of the year, I'd really like to be considered for this, let me know, okay? Because I believe in having new folks come in and do different things if they have that interest and qualifications. Other than that, so the programming for this evening, we are going to hear from someone from the planning department, and that is Ms. Jean Moore. She is the assistant director of our planning department. Behind her will be Mr. Brandon Hinton, and he is the deputy county manager for administration to talk about bond projects. And at the end of that lineup will be Terrell Hughes, Director of Public Works, to talk about sidewalk expansions. And Mr. Hughes and his folks tend to get a lot of the questions about things like the speed bumps and the sidewalks and things like that. So even though it says here sidewalk expansion, I know he's going to be ready to talk about whatever else you guys have along those lines. So I would also like to recognize Officer Nance, our community officer. And he has assured me that if anybody gets rowdy, that he is going to take care of it. So thank you for your attention for this period of time thus far. And without further ado, I ask Ms. Moore to take it over.
Thank you so much, Ms. Whitehead. So as mentioned, I'm Jean Moore. I'm one of the two assistant directors in planning. Sorry, Joe Emerson, the director, couldn't be here tonight, so I got tasked for the force. First of all, I just want to ask, how many are you familiar with the planning process, like rezonings and how plans are approved? If you could just raise your hand. Okay, that's going to help me gauge I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. So first, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of where we are now. So the county has experienced a growth rate about 1% each year, probably the last decade and a half. Before it was about 2, and of course, as you get bigger, that percentage gets smaller, and it's the same amount of people. But so 1% is about 3,500 people a year, and based on the 2020 census, the county has about 335,000 people now. And to accommodate this growth, the county adds about 900 new residences per year. So this graph really just shows the population growth in Three Chopt, shown in green, as it relates to the other 4 magisterial districts. And Three Chopt has about 75,000 people that encompasses about 20% of the total population. By law, each magisterial district has to keep that same proportion within that 20% window. And of course, we just went through a reapportionment that was approved in 2021. So as population continues to grow in certain areas, the area in size tends to shrink. That's happened a little bit as with Three Chopt, because it's a very popular place to live. So, and just touching upon, we're also becoming more diversified in age, but mainly with ethnicity and race. In terms of age, the population countywide is aging slightly, but the percentages haven't really shifted significantly in the last 20 years in Three Chopt. We have about 33% accounting for those with 60 and older, and the largest cohort is in between the ages of 45 and 59, counting for 20% of the population, followed by 20 to 34, 35 to 44, which makes sense because Three Chopt really has the bulk of the economic generators in its district, so you have a lot of working people living here. We are also becoming more diverse in ethnicity and race. According to the American Community Survey, African American, Asian, American Indian, and other races other than white account for approximately 40% of the population in Three Chopt. So when we plan for this population and the ongoing demand to live in Henrico, development trends have changed as well. Henrico really started off as a bedroom community early in the 50s and 60s on the outskirts of the city of Richmond. But over time, the county became more of an economic magnet as well. And you really saw that with when Innsbruck came in on Broad Street, and that really became a desirable place to locate, as well as other companies followed. And of course, when that happens, people follow and commercial follows. So in Three Chopt, including Innsbruck, we've seen a lot of that development, particularly occurring along West Broad Street. So I asked earlier, so I wanted to touch upon what is that process of development. And I just everyone should know that every single piece of property in the county has a zoning district tied to it. And that's a legislation which tells you what you can and can't do on your property, and that's in place. Then you have what we call the future land use plan, which is part of the comprehensive plan, which is what we vision in the future, whether that future is tomorrow or 20 years. It's what we think the county should grow, and that's based on the vision from the community process and based on our land use plan that was adopted in 2009. So basically how you go from here to here really starts in the planning department. This is just some exhibits for Greengate, just to kind of show you what's submitted. So basically, a property owner or a prospective contractor with their permission comes to us and say, hey, we want to develop this community. Can we do it? They sit down, they have a pre-app with us. We look at the comprehensive plan. We look at the existing developments around it. We look at other trends, and we also look at the best use of the property. I will tell you, a lot of things people come with do never even make it past us. So I know people think, oh, there's all this development, everyone just does what they want to do, and that's simply not true. We do have a plan that guides us, and we also have to have and think about how we balance all that growth in a way, as Ms. Whitehead alluded to, in a smart way. So basically, we go through a process. It goes to staff. Staff does a report after we get vetted through all the agencies to see how it impacts services like libraries, schools, roads, sewer. They give us our impact, and we include that in the staff report. All the adjacent property owners are notified. If you're on a list or we think a bigger area has to be notified, we will. By law, we only have to just do what touches that property. But we know there's a lot of HOAs and other interested citizens, so we keep them involved. So it's advertised, it goes to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission reviews and makes a recommendation. So it's not done. They make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. It goes on their agenda, and then the Board of Supervisors makes ultimate decisions. In a case when we're weighing things that are, say we'll deviate from what the land use plan calls for, but it's close, plans get out of date because it is a 20-year vision, often we can negotiate proffers that the applicant volunteers to say, okay, if it has this impact, then we will build this portion of the road. Or we will limit our height to this because we're near a single family. And those are kind of the items that we look at when we're recommending approval. So after that, it doesn't stop. They have to go then submit to a plan of development or subdivision, which goes through another division, and that's an administrative process. At that point, they've got their rezoning. What they need to do now is just meet the letter of the law specified in our subdivision and zoning ordinance. If they do, then really the Planning Commission approves it. There really is no, do we deny it, because it's already been approved, the rezoning, it's got its entitlement, but it must meet all those other standards. And again, it gets vetted through all the agencies to make sure things like stormwater runoff, drainage, traffic, all those meet those stringent regulations and guidelines through each agency. Then it comes back again with construction plans, and then our inspectors go out and look at it. Through this process, especially if you're involved, you can always call the planning department, Public Works, if you think there's a violation happening while they're developing it or they're not putting silt fence up. Certainly give us a call. We respond as soon as we can. So next, I'd like to talk about some projects you may be familiar with where others have yet to come out of the ground. I mentioned Innsbrook to you earlier, which is really evolving since it was developed since the 1980s. Around 2008, 2009, staff conducted a small area study called the Innsbrook Area Study. I say small area study, it was over 1,000 acre plus. And this study was prompted by, for several reasons, one of the major ones being when the recession hit, it really took a hit on all businesses, but particularly office. And then the types of development have radically changed since then. It's fueled really with the millennials and their younger cohort. They're really simply demanding a more dynamic lifestyle, and they want to live and work in close proximity so they can bike and walk. They love to see things more urbanized. So with that, and the board approved the Innsbrook study recommendation, which included an overlay with what you see highlighted in yellow, which designated that whole entirety of the area and the old Circuit City headquarters area for urban mixed use development. It was also designated a urban development area to accommodate growth in a smart way over 20 years, as the state could at that time required. And it also created an overlay district, which created certain bays, because even though it's designated for urban mixed use, there's a certain, it's T&D closer to the single family and condos. And that overlay district, if you go in and look at our code, it specifically says, yeah, you can do all these different development, but you can't adhere to this. You have to be lower to a certain height when you get up to those older communities so they're compatible. So basically what this does is, the one thing about Innsbrook, when it was developed, it was really a suburban office park, and it was what was done at the time. Lots and lots and lots and lots of surface parking. And quite frankly, it adds impervious cover. It's underutilized. You have this demand, as she said, we need more housing to make it more affordable. So basically what the Innsbruck study area allows is an equal match to, we have, it sounds scary, but 8.7 million square foot of office space already developed. You have all that surface. Why build out in these green areas when you can reuse parking lots and put residential uses there and close to work and close to the now coming bus line? All those things make sense. You have infrastructure in place. So since we've done that, we've approved several, which are highlighted in the stars, about 10. And this is about, it's going to add about 3,500 units residential, of which 1,260 have been completed at this time. Some other projects that you might see is Gayton Village. This is at West Broad Street and North Gayton, and this will be, this is under construction. It'll be 102 units with 62K square feet of retail. To the front of it is the retail, and in back is another project called Edward Rose, and that is 325 multi-family units. Another project that's under construction is Gateway Square. And this is on West Broad Street, just in front of Green Gate at the Goochland line. The development that's going up, as you can see, is a 2/2 condominiums. And there will be 194 dwellings there. Now, let's not forget a reuse of the old Lucky's convenience store, your first Waffle House in the Short Pump area. And whether you cringe or not, this is a great example of old zoning. It's been zoned for business for a long, long time, and it has no conditions on it. So anything allowed in that business district, staff is really limited of saying no because it's entitled, it already is zoned. But even through the plan and development process, which is administrative, staff was still able to negotiate a little bit higher quality of brick, get away from the old prototypical and get a better design through the POD process. Also, a project you've probably heard of, but has yet, no construction has occurred yet, is Avonlea. I'm actually pretty excited about this one. It's 183 acres. It's zoned UMU, but it's got a lot of environmental elements to it. It's going to include 1,600 residential units with a cap on apartments at 540. It's going to have 150,000 of non-residential or commercial space. But it's also going to include this paseo, which is like a natural walk. And the way the urban mixed use allows more flexibility in design. So you're going to have a lot of these units facing that paseo, very walkable. There's also a pattern book attached and approved with this that has to include some environmental elements in its design. And then next, this is a case that I'm handling. This has been deferred many times over. We call this a Del Carteret, and this is located further up Pouncey Track, just north of Cackley Elementary School. This will be it's proposed as a single family development on smaller lots, 72 homes. This has been deferred many, many times for contractual reasons by the applicant. It is deferred to March 14th on the Board of Supervisors. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Did you have a question? You're good. So next, I just wanted to touch upon something new in our zoning ordinance, which was approved in 2021. Our zoning ordinance had not been updated in its entirety in probably 50 years. So this was a major, major undertaking for us. We're proud of it. We still have some tweaks to do because it is a really comprehensive rework of that zoning ordinance. But what we included, what we call is form-based alternative overlay districts. This is really more of a tool for urban design and character. It relies less on separating those uses and, you know, industrial and what all the other from residential. And it really allows, still you can have some separation that doesn't, or really incompatible, but it focuses on the street hierarchy, the character, and the massing of buildings. And once someone comes in with that, they can kind of come in and easily relocate, change out uses, as long as they adhere to their pattern book that we have to approve. it still goes through a public hearing process. We have 5 of these allocated through the county. We have 2 on Brook Road near the Brookfield development, Parham and Broad, Williamsburg Road and Airport, Virginia Center Commons, and we also have one on Short Pump Town Center. And that's a way to kind of reimagine and reinvent what Short Pump Mall can be. My last topic, and a very important one, I want to talk about our comprehensive plan update. Right now, our comprehensive plan is known as the 2026 comprehensive plan. The next update will be the 2045 comprehensive plan through a process called Henrico Next. Basically, this is our guide over the next 20 years. While the zoning that I talked about is legislative, the comprehensive plan is very important, but it is a guide. It doesn't legislate what you can do. It's more of an aspiration, but allows planning staff, the planning commission, and the board to make solid decisions on these applications. So right now, we are just finishing up our background reports, and we are posting those on this website, our website of Henrico Next. You can look at a snapshot of where we are in demographics, our existing conditions for recreation and parks, transportation. I believe the transportations and bike studies included that with the survey. On that website, we have an interactive map where anyone, and I encourage you to do this, and I have cards in the back that you can use to get to that site. You can actually plot comments down anywhere in the county. It zooms in and you can make comments. We're looking and monitoring those daily, and we'll compile those, and all those will be put into when we start drafting what the land use feature and modeling those. All your comments will be reviewed. We've also had, we've been out in the community at least 30 times. That will just be the beginning of it. Because right now we're just trying to get the word out to get you guys involved. So please, please, please get on the website, take a look at it, make your comments. If you're a property owner, you could also make a separate email. Through our last process, we got several people who said, hey, my land is designated this, I want to change it that. We'll evaluate it. The next steps to this is really just phase 1. The next step is once we get all the comments and background, we will start looking at changes potential in the future land use map that I talked about. What should this property be in 20 years? We will run that through modeling. We run a transportation model. We run a fiscal model. We look at, we'll get engaged with other agencies. And anytime the citizens, we're going to go out and talk to special groups. And all that will kind of come up to a draft land use plan. We'll go out again and kind of do a roadshow. We'll hit the communities where you guys will like chime in and give us comments again. And after that, we'll go through a public hearing process where it goes and gets reviewed by the Planning Commission and ultimately with the Board of Supervisors. We hope that we will get this adopted in 2025. A lot of this really just depends on you guys, how much comments we have, how much we have to address. I will say this, that this plan is going to be more robust environmentally than it has been before. And it's also going to address affordable housing through its different land uses. We do that now through our myriad of zoning classifications and our land use designations, but that will be a big component as well. So with that, I know that was a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions right now? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So just to repeat real quickly for the folks on WebEx, related to the new buildings that are going in and the new communities, particularly mixed use. This question is based upon, I have an adult child who lives in the Midwest, and in their city, I don't know if this is a local city ordinance or if this is within their state, but they're required for new construction that a certain percentage of the apartments basically be rent control, for lack of a better term. And so like my daughter, you know, she was able to qualify for, she made too much money for a studio, but she made enough. She was under the limit to be able to basically apply for one of the lower rent apartments in this building. And I wondered if we had anything like that here in Henrico. Would that be a Henrico ordinance? Would that be a state thing?
It's a combination of both. It is seen a lot in cities where there's more population and is built out. And it involves usually when they have a housing program and a separate agency for that. There are programs out there outside the county that has programs to get affordable housing in different areas. So we don't vet that. It's certainly something, I guess, the county that would be up to Misty then to talk about whether they want to establish a housing program or not. But I am familiar with what you're talking about. What we have seen, and we've included recent development, actually, we've included land trust, where the developer is proffering and said that so many units will be placed in a land trust, and it's called the Maggie Walker Land Trust. And what that does is it lowers the land value, which is really the driver of homes. It's the value of the land. That's why Three Chopt, the value of the land so high, it's really less about the structure. So we have that with the East-West or Arcadia. We just got so many units out in Verina, and we're also getting some on Staples Mill next to the new fire station. So that is one tool that the Henrico is partnering with.
So none of the units that we talked about would be affordable housing units by design?
Well, through those certain developers, but again, it's not applied. I used to work for a city where if you had it, a certain percentage had to be either donated toward that program. And that way the city then could like build it. They could allocate property elsewhere for affordable housing, or they build it on site.
Thank you.
Yeah. And yes, sir.
One question that we have is, when is the best time or the most appropriate time for citizens to get some input into the planning process? From the staff to the planning commission to the board. Sometimes we don't know what the staff is working on. By the time the planning commission gets it, the staff has already made a recommendation. So it's a little harder. By the time it reaches the board, a project has a lot of momentum. It's very difficult. How and when and where can citizens best get involved?
Sure, that's a great question. So at any point, please keep it, and I hate to say, like, check our website. So we publish the agendas for all of these developments 2 weeks ahead. That's not a lot of time, but it is available then. We also, my card is right there, I'll give it to you. We can put you on a tickler and we'll just notify you if anything in your area or what you're interested in. And we'll just include you on the list and say, hey, this is on the agenda. We do that a lot. Also, I should have mentioned, we also, once we get a prospective development come in, it's not required, but we usually highly suggest that they have a community meeting much in advance before that planning commission meeting. So you have the community meeting, hopefully a month or two in advance. You have the planning commission meeting, which is just a recommendation, and then you'll be notified in a month. It'll go to the Board of Supervisors. Now, I want to make sure I have enough time for the rest of the two, but just real quick. Yes, sir.
Yeah, following up on his question, when does the impact statement actually come out to the public so that we can see it? And how detailed is it as far as soil, water, air, traffic control? In other words, this impact statement.
Sure.
And when did, in this whole process, does the impact statement come to light to the public so that we can see it?
Okay, so most of development, once you have it, the county is already, we think much years in advance, and Terrell can talk about this in Public Works. But a lot of the things under the zoning and the current plan that we plan for, we know those developments for the most part can be handled and it's already accommodated. On some occasion, when it's a huge project, there'll be impact statement that may be involved, and that's required by state. We have all those state regulations. It goes through Public Works. But typically, when you're looking at rezoning, you're really looking at the zoning and the uses. Is the zoning, is the use appropriate? Those details of drainage, soils, all those detailed specs comes with the plan of development and construction plan after the rezoning. But if a rezoning is big enough, then it may be warrant, like, we might say, hey, we need to get those up front. But that's really not the time to get those.
It's rezoned, and then the impact statement comes?
Typically, not all development requires an impact statement because we have already accounted and have those services in place. It really depends on the use, sir. And one more, and then I'm gonna pass it over.
I go, but many places throughout the country, affordable housing is being decimated by the explosion of Airbnbs. So is the county tracking what's happening with that? And is it being, addressed through any zoning as though that's a commercial thing? It shouldn't be residential?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, we adopted a short-term rental ordinance as part of our zoning ordinance a few years back. And actually, to the chagrin of Airbnb and Venmo, they weren't really happy about it. But we require, when it's unhosted or if it's over a certain amount of stay, they have to get a conditional use permit through the Board of Zoning Appeals. Right now, I will say there's legislation out there that wants to just do it by right in any district. We chime in with General Assembly every year on that. So far, so good. So yes, ma'am, we do have a process. It's not by right. We look at it on a conditional use permit basis. Okay, with that, I'm gonna give it over to Brandon Hinton.
Thank you, Gene, and good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here this evening, and we've been tasked, and we being Terrell, Hughes, and Public Works and I have been tasked this evening to talk about public infrastructure. Some things that are going on now, some things that are coming in the future. You're going to see that Terrell has a lot more in number of projects that are going on. You look around the county, you'll see road projects, mobility projects. We talked about sidewalk a little bit earlier. And he's going to do his best to get through all that as quick as he can, I know. But that's going to be rather difficult to do. But outside of Public Works, we also have a number of projects going on as well. As you all may recall, in November of 22, for those of you that voted for a $511.4 million what we call a GO, or general obligation bond referendum. We had 4 questions on the ballot. All 4 questions received nearly 90% success rate, which was by far the largest success rate Henrico County has had in any referendum in this county's history. You'll see the 4 questions. Schools, recreation and parks, public safety and drainage. And all of those will touch Three Chopt, and we'll go through some of those projects in a moment. Now, we don't go out and issue $511 million at one time. You will see $500+ million in projects happening at one time. We pride ourselves on fiscal responsibility. We intentionally stagger that debt, so the timing of projects are timed as much or as we do that. So we just want to make sure we don't overburden our finances, and certainly we would never let that happen. Going through some of the bond projects, I'm going to start with our school system. You'll see a new and larger Davis Elementary School is currently being designed. I was told today that this project will be under active construction this summer. And it's not only a replacement, Davis, it will be a replacement and expanded. So additional classrooms to accommodate growth. And I was also told this morning in talking to school staff about an 18 to 20 month construction schedule. So the beauty of the schools, and we're replacing a number of schools in this referendum, is that there is enough site outside of the school facility, and it's hard to see on the slide, but there's enough land outside of the school to build while the school is in operation, which I know is a question that I received a lot in talking about the bond referendum a year and a half ago. But that impedes, it avoids impeding child learning while this new school is being built. Now, once that building is closed, when it's completed, the demo of the old school will start taking place, and that's about a 4 to 6 month process. And that includes rebuilding all of the athletic facilities, all the different amenities, playgrounds, et cetera, for our students. Now, I will say at the same time, exact same construction schedule as Davis Elementary School, we have a new Longin Elementary School being constructed as well. And I mentioned Longin, although it's not physically located in Three Chopt, that school will help alleviate River's Edge and some of the crowding efforts there at River's Edge. And speaking of River's Edge, the bond referendum also included funding for a brand new elementary school in the Three Chopt district. You can see at the top that River's Edge and Colonial Trail continues to be two of our most crowded elementary schools. It goes without saying that we are in need of a new elementary school in the Three Chopt district. The bond referendum that was approved again in November is allowing for funds for a new school. As far as timeline goes, we are actively seeking land sufficiently sized for an elementary school. You all as being Three Chopt residents, I live right down the street in Tuckahoe, but a mile away. I can see it around. There's not a lot of parcels left in Three Chopt in Tuckahoe sufficient for an elementary school. We are getting creative. We are actively seeking, and there are some prospects out there, believe it or not. So that's plan one, is to find land for it. The next phase, you'll see that funding for design for the school would come in 2027, which means construction would begin in 2028. So we're hopeful that there'll be a new elementary school in approximately the year 2030 in the Three Chopt district in Henrico. So Terrell's going to touch a little bit more on this in a moment. But this project I want to talk about in a moment is on some land, 205 acres of land that we bought back in 2007, have done nothing with, close to Kane Road. He's going to talk to you about some leasehold farm drive improvements that are necessary to access this 205 acres of land. But then there's two projects that were approved in the referendum to be a part of this piece of property. The first, out of the ground, will be a no-kill or humane animal shelter. I know we've talked a lot about that project. It actually had a public naming of this project, and thank you to all to put a vote in. The winning name was the Henrico Pet Adoption Center. So it sounds very governmental, I know, and there were some fun ones, if you recall, that were the bark. Go back and look if you want. Some really entertaining options, but the government sounding one is the one that won out from the public, so we'll take it. Democracy at its finest. And so design funding for this project slated for next fiscal year's budget. So the budget that's going before the board on March the 12th. And should the board adopt that budget, we have a public hearing on March 26th on that budget. Should the board adopt the budget, it'll be effective July 1st. It will be soon after we're pursuing design contracts for this building, which means construction funding would come the following fiscal year. So we're going into fiscal year 25, it'd be fiscal year 26, which will be in July of 2025 for construction of this building. A second project on this site are construction of a number of trails. There's a lot of wetland back there, we've learned, so it's perfect for trail systems, but also taking advantage of some land to enhance our athletic fields. You may have been a number of articles recently about success of sports tourism. Henrico has done very, very well in that realm. The more people we have come into our community and spend their money in our restaurants and our malls, it keeps our tax burden where it is. It's the lowest of the low. So that's incredibly important to us. And perhaps at a future date, it's one that I know is still being pursued, and it'd be school board and board supervisor conversations for down the road, but it could be the athletic field improvements that we're making could coincide with a future high school at some point down the road. That's, again, way down the road, not a part of this referendum, but sometime down the road. Firehouse 16, that you all may be familiar with, is going to receive, as part of the 22 referendum, a much needed facelift and a much needed expansion. Fire services from 50 years ago facilities are not adequate for fire service today. You can see that there are 2 bays here. We're building firehouses now with 4 bays because we have that much apparatus, and Back when we were building these facilities, we didn't provide EMS services, and now, of course, we provide EMS services as well. One item that I want to talk about that's incredibly important to us, so it's not just a renovation, but it's an expansion, an addition. We've learned a lot in 50 years. Science has been great, but it's proven that the carcinogens in fire causes cancer for our firefighters. That's a proven fact. This facility currently does not have a decontamination room where firefighters can take their turnout gear and be able to mitigate the carcinogens on their equipment. So a much needed enhancement to a firehouse to accommodate our brave firefighters that do amazing work each and every day. But that's coming to Firehouse 16 amongst, quite frankly, it's across the county. There are 4 firehouses that are getting this. 16 is one of those. Update on the pickleball courts at Pouncey Track Park that are under construction as of later last year. I think it was late summer, early fall last year. $4.4 million project. I was told that will be completed sometime this summer. I was told not to give a specific date because if we get any more rain, I think the director of Recreation Parks is going to lose about as much hair as I have lost over the years. But we've had some pretty wet months here, as you all know, December, January, that may have impacted the schedule, but they're doing everything they can to speed that back up. How many pickleball players? I know there's always pickleball players in the room. Nobody. That's shocking. Or you're being shy about it, one or the other. And I want to talk a little bit about some other projects of note. Cheswick Park, for those of you that are adjacent or live next to Cheswick, it is our oldest, so it was our first park and our oldest park. As part of the 2016 bond referendum, received a much needed facelift and is now back open to the public. So that's the only Three Chopt project on this list. I'm going to kind of go through and talk about projects in other districts really quickly, but have a direct impact on the whole county, including Three Chopt. The first here is from the 2022 bond referendum in an environmental living building at Wilton Farm. So this building, who's familiar with what a living building is? So a living building is actually a building that generates more power than it actually uses. It adds power to the grid. If you Google it, there's a living building challenge and all this other cool stuff. This would be the largest living building in a K-12 setting in the country. So it's under design currently. The number of design firms that submitted to do this project were significant because it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for these folks to do some really cool work. This building would support the new Specialty Center for Environmental Studies at Verona High School, but the intent is to also bus out kids, elementary school kids, other kids, to come really learn about science firsthand. It's on the river at Wilton Farm. You'll be able to play with the frogs and do the things that it's hard to teach in a classroom, but to have a setting like this to share with our 52,000 Henrico students would be very kind of a cool thing. Verona on the James, one of the first actions of the new board of supervisors, we acquired, we're close to acquiring a couple little technical components, but Verona on the James, it's a little over 2,000 acres in Verona. For those of you that aren't familiar, some of the most historic land in this county and in the country, quite frankly. Rumor has it, Miss Whitehead, John Rolfe and Pocahontas actually raised their child on this property. Has been farmed for hundreds of years. It's incredibly important for Henrico for several reasons. One is preservation of history. And we plan to do exactly that with this board's support. We will tell the story that's there. We don't know the whole story that's there. The other piece of this is we're going to go in and do archaeological studies. But I can't imagine the type of history that we're going to find here. But number two, it's yet additional preservation of green space. And we actually have over 5,000 acres in Verona alone of preserved green space. And again, Verona helps that number a lot with over 2,000, but a concerted effort of the Board of Supervisors to preserve that space, because once it's gone, it's gone. So yet another significant addition that impacts all of us. And then I'll end with two projects that were on the 22 bond referendum. Public safety training building, we're looking for a site now. I think we're honing in on one. There will be a state-of-the-art training facility for our firefighters, our police officers, and our sheriff's deputies. And then drainage improvements. We had a $50 million number approved on the referendum. Drainage, especially as I talked about wet months in December and January, Rainfall has caused significant issues across our community with flooding and so forth, particularly in Tuckahoe and Verino. That's our two biggest issues. But it's $50 million. The idea is that we, and Mr. Hughes here is presenting to the Board of Supervisors a prioritization plan here shortly, right, Mr. Hughes? They've been doing a lot of work to find out where our lowest hanging fruit is, the biggest bang for the buck, if you will, because he can tell you better than I can, $50 million is the biggest investment we've ever made in drainage, but it's a drop in the bucket of the future allocations that's going to be needed to battle climate change and all the impacts that we're finding from that. I said those are the last two projects, but really quickly before I turn it over, I want to touch base on two other projects that I think are fascinating. One, we recently received what's called a VATI grant from the state. It's the Virginia Technology Initiative, I believe, in which we have actually, believe it or not, in 2024, we have a number of parcels, all of which are in the Verina district, that do not have broadband access. So this grant will broadband the entire county. No parcel, no house, no citizen, no business in Henrico will not go without broadband. As you all know, that's a critical service these days. It's a public safety service these days, and they'll have access to that project. And the last one I'll talk to you about that Mr. Hughes can also talk more intelligently about, we recently received a federal grant for electric vehicle infrastructure around the county. You'll start, they're designing currently, they'll start to be deployed in the next year or so, Terrell. Hopefully, but it's going to allow us to place EV charging facilities around the county in strategic locations where central places where most folks can access. So not in the middle of nowhere, if you will, where you have a couple of cars, but in all magisterial districts with places where there's congregated people and that could be most beneficial. Trying to go as fast as possible, ladies and gentlemen. Are there any questions on these outside of public works? Because I know Terrell's going to cover quite a bit. Yes, ma'am.
So as I hear you talk about new housing coming in and potentially new schools, I just want to make a comment that I think it's really important as we look at that for there to be honest projections about the number of school-age kids that will live in the new housing that will come in the Three Chopt district, because as you know, many of our schools are at or over capacity. And so I think that it's important for honest projections about how many school-age kids will live in those new dwellings and go to the schools that are already at or over capacity, since we are, as you mentioned, Brandon, a long way from a new elementary and a new high school. So I just wanted to make that comment because I think that's important for our community.
No, I appreciate that. And Ms. Moore could probably tell you more about it, but as we go through the process, the zoning process, school staff actually go through that meticulously. And we've had some struggles with that area in the past. Higher end apartment buildings, for example, maybe yielding more kids than they projected more kids than actually happened. So we're seeing it on both sides. But good local governments actually try to get ahead of this. And the referendum did not include just one new elementary school, it was two. So there's one in the Fairfield Magisterial District. And for those of you who have seen the growth around Virginia Sierra Commons, this new elementary school will be located in the River Mill subdivision right there at Brook Road to accommodate what's absolutely going to be additional kids coming out of those developments there. Local governments struggle to keep ahead. I can tell you, I won't name individual localities here because some of them are nearby, but they've grown so fast that they've had a hard time keeping up with the infrastructure. And we're trying not to get to that point. And really, I keep pointing to Terrell, but what his department is doing in the infrastructure side along roads and so forth, I think a lot of that infrastructure lies there. And that includes things that are happening in Short Palm and others. I don't want to steal his thunder, but we're trying to stay ahead of that infrastructure need.
One quick one, not specific to Three Chopt, but since you brought up land use in Verina and the need to preserve agricultural land, can you speak to efforts to balance the desire to expand the data center industry with the need to preserve the agricultural land in Verina?
I know there's a zoning case coming forward. I don't want to speak on behalf of the board and all of that. So I don't have a comment. I haven't been involved in that project, so I can't speak to it firsthand. I'm sorry. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Brendan. All right, once again, I'm Terrell Hughes, the Department of Public Works Director here at the county. So I'm going to quickly go through a bunch of transportation initiatives that we're doing in Three Chopt. So real quick, some of you may have seen the vests. I see a few of you have some vests, and we have some of these are free. We're giving out. That say "Whoa" on them. So we've actually just launched a new campaign for pedestrian safety. So one of the challenges that we've had really over the last 5-6 years in the county, especially since the pandemic, has been issues with pedestrian safety. So in Henrico County, I'll just be transparent. We're actually number 2 in the state in pedestrian fatalities, behind only Fairfax County. So we're really focused on pedestrian infrastructure and safety, just trying to get out a lot of the awareness. You'll see a number of our projects are pedestrian focused, and that's because when the county developed, we were, I guess, viewed, or the thought was more we were a rural suburban county, and we're quickly seeing we're urbanizing a little bit, and we're now having to go back and retrofit a lot of the pedestrian infrastructure that we previously didn't have. So yeah, this is, like I said, if you look at, you can Google it, watch out ahead. There's some videos that our PR team and police have put together, really just kind of educating the public on, what things you can do to be safer, as well as a driver, just trying to promote the awareness that, hey, we do have people walking now, so look out for pedestrians as well. The other big thing I'll highlight, so we recently launched, this is brand new. Beth, she was at the table. She could probably talk to you more if you want to find out more information or sign up, called Word on the Street. And this is really where we're getting a number of our infrastructure efforts, our public utilities, public works efforts out there. This will be a newsletter where you can sign up for updates in the Three Chopt district, as well as just updates countywide on what's going on from a project standpoint. We've really been trying to get the word out, figuring out new ways. If you have ideas on how we can better reach out to people as well, and just when we have studies, when we're working on projects, because I'm sure you'll see some of the projects here you probably weren't aware of. So we're just trying to get the word out on a number of our projects as well. And these will be monthly newsletters. Another big countywide effort that we're working on, and this is really kind of zeroed in on the Three Chopt district, is a draft bike plan. So this is actually part of the comprehensive plan. So in addition to trying to boost and you'll see a lot of sidewalk efforts, we're also working on a bike plan where we really are looking at bike plan connectivity. So a lot of times residents kind of wonder, hey, I see these bike lanes, but they don't really get me from point A to point B. Or I see this trail here, but it really doesn't connect anything. So I just want to let everybody know this is part of a grander plan, a bigger plan, and over the years, this will take us a number of years to fully accomplish, but we are working towards some really good connectivity from a biking standpoint as well as a pedestrian standpoint. And that's available online as well. So here's some recent efforts that we've done. So like I said, last year was a very busy year. We actually completed 34 projects around the county. From a construction standpoint, big and small. Some of the big efforts that we were really working on, and you'll see these, the pedestrian flashers. I believe that's the one on North Gayton. So we've been adding those around the county, really trying to enhance the pedestrian safety where people are crossing the street from one intersection to the other. A lot of sidewalk. I believe that's the one up in Causeway. Trail projects. That's another one on Gayton, as well as completing bus shelters on Broad Street. So we just got through, people were wondering what took us so long. We had to get through a number of hurdles through the state, the General Services Department. They view bus shelters as structures. So it took us a number of years to get design that they would approve. So so got some funding there. Federal funding has been identified and we've received. So we'll be putting more bus shelters and trash cans around the county. That's the one over near the Walmart at Short Pump. Wondering. So I'll just kind of quickly click through. This is one that we recently completed, sidewalk on Causeway. If you live along the Church Road corridor, you'll see that we recently completed some sidewalk on Church Road with a refuge island. On Three Chopt Road, so this is over near Freeman High School. You'll see that we recently completed some sidewalk there with some safety enhancements. a multi-use trail on North Gayton. So there's a little section of North Gayton between two communities where really you didn't have a good crossing from one street to the other. So we bridged the gap between those two communities so people walking from one side or of Gayton to the other, from one community to the other, had a safe place to cross. For those that commute into downtown, and maybe you don't, we have a park and ride lot that the county actually maintains in Three Chopt District. This is where we run express bus service to downtown from GRTC. If you were in the lot, the lighting was old and out of date. We've updated that with LED lights, more energy efficient, better lighting as well for safety. We currently have a multi-use trail around the Green Gate area over really between Broad Street and some of the trails that are already in the community. That's currently under construction. Sadler Road, this is a big one that will be going to construction in really a few short months. We've acquired all of the right of way. It's currently in utility relocation, and we just got, I guess we're getting close to federal authorization. So this project has some federal funding to actually bid the project out. It'll be about a 2-year construction process, but will include a much improved road. If you've driven Sadler Road, you'll see it's a very narrow, windy road. The road will be, improved curves, a few roundabouts for intersection safety, as well as a shared use trail. Another big project, hopefully we'll be bidding this one out later this year, currently in utility relocations, is Three Chopt Road. So from Gaskins to pretty much Pocahontas Middle School, much needed improvements there, fixing some of the culverts. There's a few areas that are prone to flooding, a number of curves, and just generally widening the road out to 4 lanes with sidewalk on both sides of the street. So long time coming. This project's been around for quite a while. Once again, a 2-year process. So hoping to bid it out later this year, pending utilities. And then once we break ground. Yeah, so I can explain that. That's a good question. So when you look at utility lines, there's really 3 entities are on every utility line. So the poles are owned by Dominion. So that's the electric utility. We also have Verizon and Comcast that are co-located on the poles. So we've got a really good relationship with Dominion, able to get them to move off the poles fairly quickly. Then once they get their new poles set up and they're off of those poles, that's when Verizon and Comcast then have to relocate. So we're currently, I think we're waiting on Verizon and Comcast to then relocate. So that's when the old poles can go. And then at that point, we'll be able to start construction. So good question. But yeah, it does. That's what happens. It is very stop, start, and a good question. I could get the answer for you on that. I don't want to answer that wrong. Probably 50-50 guess, but I don't know the exact answer. So, but no, they will start at one end and then kind of work towards the other way. So this is, Brandon mentioned this. This is up in the off of North Gayton. There's a county-owned parcel there that we have some big plans, working on a master plan there, park, potential school site, as well as the no-kill animal shelter. So we're currently working on some intersection improvements at Leasefield Farm Drive, which will basically extend Leasefield Farm and then connect in. And then we're working with the developer of Avonlea. They're actually going to build the majority of the rest of the road that parcel accesses. So we're currently this will and it's planned on going to construction early next year. So yep. So here's another one up in the Innsbrook area. So this is Sadler at Sadler Place. So there's development in that area. The developer is going to be putting some improvements in on really the intersection of Knuckles and Lakebrook. That's actually going to dramatically improve the operations of the intersection. So this is one of the few cases where after the development, the amount of improvements that the developer has proffered will actually improve the operations of the intersection after development because of the level of improvement that they're making here. But the county will be improving the intersection of Sadler at Sadler Place, as well as adding an additional lane between Sadler Road and Cox Road, which will help with traffic flow in that area. I'm going to skip this one, but we're basically going to improve the intersection of Parham at Malin. That was really technical, but we're going to basically improve the operations of that intersection. That's one, if you're familiar with the I-64 interchange, it backs up. So this area I'm showing here is Old Knuckles Road, Sadler, or Shady Grove, just south of Knuckles. So we've recently had some public meetings on this where we'll be adding bike lanes and accommodations as well as a roundabout at that intersection to improve the operations there. And then we're also going to be improving, there's a curve that frequently has cars run off the road on Sadler Road, or Shady Grove, that we'll also be improving as part of this project. Pedestrian hybrid beacons, I don't have a video explaining this, but essentially we're putting in dedicated pedestrian signals. Basically, these are blank signals that have a special flash pattern that when a pedestrian pushes the button, it'll actually stop traffic just like a traffic light. So we're currently planning 2 locations, one at basically at Mills Godwin High School, and then the other one that we're actually planning is over at Hickory Bend, which is at Twin Hickory where the library is at. So these are 2 locations that are really difficult for pedestrians to cross. I'll just say we're not seeing very good stop for pedestrians at the crosswalk compliance along 4-lane roads. So we're working really closely with schools on a couple of these locations to provide safer locations for our, really our school children to walk. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention we have a number of VDOT funded projects. You're probably feeling the pain of Pemberton or Skipwith. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but the bridges had much needed work done on them. So they had been around since I-64 was built and had essentially got to the point where they needed to be repaired. So VDOT's currently working on that. Both projects are slated to be done this fall. So I know there's a little pain with some of the detours on that, but it's coming to an end soon. Some other good news. So the county actually, we received funding for the Paramount I-64 interchange. So if you've driven that interchange, you'll know that there's some congestion at that location as well as a number of safety issues. So essentially we'll be putting two signals to control that intersection and add a safe pedestrian crossing at that intersection as well, or at the interchange as well. So I won't spend too much time, but this basically means we've got a lot of sidewalk going in on Broad Street. So we lots of money. We've got a lot of state. We've competed and done really well competing for state funding and federal funding for sidewalk on Broad Street. We are pretty much like if you drive Broad Street, you'll see we have a lot of missing segments of sidewalk. We have funding for pretty much all of it. If you start from the Richmond City line all the way to Goochland, if it's missing sidewalk, we probably have funding for it. The 2 exceptions that we are needing to figure out are the 2 interchanges at I-64 in Glenside and the interchange at Broad Street and Short Pump area. So I'll have some more on that, but those are really the 2 tough areas that we have to figure sidewalk out. Other than that, we've gotten funding for everything else. Here's some other improvements. I won't spend too much time, but basically we have some funded operational improvements along Broad Street as well, especially to the west of the 64 ramp. The other big thing, like I said, I don't know if y'all have seen some of this in the news, but we've been over the last 3 years, 3, 4, maybe longer, we've been studying really the Short Pump area, looking for a new interchange. Last summer, we actually received federal approval for a new interchange at North Gayton in I-64. A lot more to come. So this one is currently in environmental study. So a number of things like noise studies and just making sure that the environmental impacts are minimized with this new interchange. So more to come on this, but we're moving full steam ahead. Really believe this will be part of the solution of the congestion in the Short Pump area that I'm sure everyone here has experienced. We haven't forgot about pedestrians and bikes as well. That new interchange design will include pedestrian accommodations, and then the package of improvements that we're hoping to get funding for, and we're competing for state and federal funding this year, will also include improvements to the Broad Street interchange, which will hopefully address the pedestrian issues at that location. So we're looking at a pulse extension. A lot of people think it's going to go out the Short Pump. It may eventually get there, but right now our prime focus for the next phase is to get it out to Parham Road, which really gets it into Three Chopt District. But we've enhanced bus service along Broad Street as well. So more to come with this. Another thing I'm excited, we're working on micro transit. So think Uber, Lyft, if you're familiar with that, where it's pretty much ride hailing on demand. We've a number of businesses, essentially if you're not on fixed route transit or the transit line, you have to walk once you get off or figure out a different ride. So we've actually secured state funding for a pilot micro transit program, which essentially operates like Uber, where once you reach the end of your bus line, or if you're not on a bus line, it'll connect you to a fixed route bus line. So we have one area that's about to happen next year up in the Innsbruck area. And then in the next few years, most of the Three Chopt district and a lot of Tuckahoe district will be covered with microtransit. So more to come with that, but so far so good. Our first pilot is over in the Fairfield district up in Rico. And it's been very helpful in connecting people to a Amazon distribution facility, fulfillment center from a job standpoint. And that's an area where we don't have bus service. Not spend too much time on the rest of this, but we've got a few other projects that are underway in the county. I didn't want to, that's just Three Chopt district. So I moved pretty quick, but happy to answer any questions if there's a few minutes. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so the question is, are there any studies being done on Church Road? Are you talking about the section from Three Chopt to John Rolfe? I don't know if there's any plans on widening it. What we've identified essentially is needing to either make turn lane improvements or intersection level improvements from a daily traffic standpoint. The road does not necessarily need to be widened to 4 lanes, but there are certain improvements like pedestrian accommodations and intersection accommodations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're saying on Church Road? Okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, so yeah, that, like I said, what's planned really is the level of improvements are intersection improvements and pedestrian accommodations. Now, one thing I will mention, a lot of times when we build sidewalk, we do have to improve the road as well. People often wonder why sidewalk takes so long or why does it cost so much. So a lot of times in order for us to build sidewalk, we have to improve the road shoulder, the drainage, and build curb and gutter. So that a lot of times will be considered as part of the project. But yeah, I think I know the area that you're talking about. We have been looking at that area, but nothing set in stone there yet.
So the lighted pedestrian crosswalks hold a place near and dear to my heart because my wife and I, we live right near the intersection of Three Chopt and Church, where that new lighted walks sign was put in. But because we go walk in the opposite neighborhood, but part of the issue is that a ton of people don't stop for the lighted crosswalks. And I think from a public safety standpoint, we know that like severity of punishment doesn't deter people so much as the guarantee that you will be caught when you do something that you're not supposed to be doing from a traffic violation. So I was wondering if it would be possible in the near future to get essentially traffic cameras put on those. So while the button's been pressed and the lights are active, if a car passes, it would snap your tag, like if you're speeding or you're going through a red light in any of those situations, and then it's mailed to them like automated traffic enforcement. Because I think that would really cut down on a lot of because we were almost hit by a car today, for example, when somebody didn't stop for us. So
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. So in Virginia, we can only, Henrico only has the authority that they've given us from the state level. Right now, the state only allows 2 types of automated enforcement, one being school zones, the other being work zones. So there really wouldn't be, there's no automated enforcement option that we would even be able to enact for crossings. And and I think honestly, that's something we've been trying to figure out from a promotional standpoint. So that's why we're the WOA campaign and trying to get the word. We'll have a number of videos and a number of outreach efforts really to help promote. I think really the big problem is people aren't looking for pedestrians. And I think we're just as a community, we just need to look out for each other and kind of understand, because I've seen that at a number of locations. And I think over time, people will get used to the flashing pedestrian infrastructure. We just need to promote that. But what you're experiencing is very consistent with what we've seen with the number. That's why we've upgraded how much we invest per crosswalk And we're putting the flashes in because we're really hoping to promote safety. All right.
And I'll say, just as a follow-up, and well, first of all, can we please give a round of applause to all of our people? So I didn't realize before coming in how often our county employees come to things outside of what we would consider to be normal work hours. Even just in Three Chopt alone, HOA meetings, things like this, they make themselves available. They prepare, they do these PowerPoints and things. So I think we don't necessarily give them enough credit for how hard they work outside of normal business hours. But to your point, so there are so many very specific concerns that neighborhood groups have. And one, Terrell, what is the email address for traffic calming? It's something, right? Traffic calming at henrico.us, very, very user-friendly there. So specific emails related to traffic calming concerns can be sent there, and they get directed to the right person, and we work on it. And then also just coming out to neighborhood meetings, HOA meetings, so that we can speak very specifically to concerns that you're having in your areas. I know that that's something that that I want to do more of. There was one of the first things I asked the county manager and chief of staff was to give me, I don't know what's activating that, a list of all of the HOAs, because my intent was to reach out to every HOA and say, here's how you can reach me. Let me know when your meetings are, but we don't have that. There is no really reliable list of HOAs and community organizations. So I'm kind of just putting that plea out there that if you have an organization of some sort, right, whether it's whatever entity, group of, interest, affiliations, affinity groups, or whatever, and you have an issue that you want to hear the county speak to or hear your concerns on, just let us know. And we will make ourselves available. I'll make myself available to come out to these meetings and speak to you so that you can have a little more specific one-on-one time. And I will ask the relevant folks from the county to come out and address you specifically as well. I know that some things aren't going to have the best solution, right? Because we're working with limited amounts of land. There's only so many things we can do with roads and things like that. I can never guarantee an outcome. I can guarantee you a process. I can guarantee you that when you have a concern that you want to be heard about, we will hear you. There will be a process by which you can have your concerns heard and your questions answered, and then we'll discuss what the solution may be. And then we'll work together to try to find a solution. So to that, I know I don't have an answer for how to solve that problem here for tonight, but we can continue that conversation. Any other questions about anything else that you guys may have? Yes, sir.
But a comment, and I want to personally thank, my name is Frank Callahan. I'm the chairman of the Henrico NAACP's Educational Committee, and I want to personally thank you for what you did last week coming into the high school and speaking to many of our students. This past year, with the cooperation of the school board, the school administration, and other people, other organizations within your group, we did a pilot program in the Varina district in an elementary school, a junior high, and a senior high honoring Black history. And Misty, you did an excellent job with the students. And one of the things that I found out during this whole process is that the county, and the county librarian system came to speak, and they did an excellent job. And one of the things we found out is that the county does an excellent job of honoring different cultural groups every month, not just Black History Month, but every month. And I want to thank you and thank the county for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan, for the work that you do so diligently on behalf of Henrico NAACP. I'll put that out there also. I think that many of us, myself included, that are on the board really see our role as including kind of being advocates and ambassadors for our various districts. And so, coming out to events, ribbon cuttings, things like this, I think that's part of our role as well. Speaking at events, addressing students. I work with juveniles every day, and so that's definitely a demographic that is near and dear to my heart. So please use us, right? This is what we are here to do. We want to be vibrant in government. So thank you for that comment, Frank. Anything else? Okay. Well, and if you have further questions on anything you've heard, I think we can agree that there is a lot going on in Three Chopt and the county as a whole. Conversation does not end here. Feel free to continue to send questions. You can email my office directly at threechopt@henrico.us with anything specific. Trying to decide how often we're going to have these town hall meetings. Thank you guys for coming out. And I look forward to continuing to work with you guys. Thank you so much.